the great man, Mr. Munger, who's been a guide, mentor to so many of us. I mean, we've really heard him through his books and through his one-liners. I have attended the conference, Berkshire conference, once in Omaha. So, as a tribute to him, I want to start with a chapter where you quoted him, where you said that he has duly noted that the world isn't driven by greed, the world is driven by envy. And the first rule to happiness is to keep expectations extremely low. And you have a brilliant anecdote to explain that. So if you can elaborate for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the case that no matter where you are or how old you are or where you live, there's no such thing as an objective level of wealth. Everything is just relative to other people. So when you're trying to gauge how well you're doing financially, it has nothing to do with how much money you have. It's just how much money do I have relative to that person, relative to your peers or your coworkers or your siblings, whoever it may be. And because of that, you have people who are in these like very different situations. Some people have very little money, but feel rich because they're comparing themselves to people who have even less. And then there's also people who have tons of money. There are billionaires who don't feel that wealthy because they're comparing themselves to decabillionaires. So that it's a really important thing when dealing with money to understand that everything is relative to your expectations. And there's no exceptions to that. And I think what has happened throughout a lot of the world over the last 80 years or so, particularly in the Western world, is that we've gotten richer. Our incomes have gone up, our net worths have gone up, but our expectations have gone up by even more. So we don't feel like we're better off, even if statistically, if you look at the numbers in the United States, you know, our incomes adjusted for inflation are about double what they were 80 years ago. Like pretty good. Like you doubled it during, 2 generations. That's not a bad level of growth, but we don't feel better off at all. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that we were actually felt richer back then because our expectations were lower back then. A lot of that was, back in the 1950s, we had just come off the Great Depression and World War II. So relative to the hell of that, any kind of prosperity in the 50s felt great because our expectations were lower. It's also, I think it's way more difficult today than it's ever been because of social media. Because now when you're comparing yourselves to other people, it's not your coworkers and your neighbors like it used to be. Now you compare yourself to a curated highlight reel of a bunch of strangers who are just giving you this kind of fake view of their life and where everybody looks richer, happier, prettier than you on social media. And so because of that, even if you are doing very well financially in your career and whatnot, it has a tendency to, it's more powerful than ever to feel like you're falling behind. I think you're actually seeing that in the data, at least in the United States this year. It's really interesting. Statistically, the economy is doing very well. But if you look at people's moods, consumer confidence, it's awful. People feel terrible about the economy. And there could be a lot of explanations for that. But I think at least one of them is like we live in a world now where no matter what is actually going on statistically, it's very easy to feel like you are falling behind relative to everybody else. So to me, the biggest part from the book is like, no matter how well you're doing financially, you need to put just as much emphasis into managing your expectations. And if you don't, it's never going to feel like you're doing well. So if you actually want to be happy with your money, that's not only part of the equation, it is as important to your financial well-being to manage your expectations than it is to actually improve your circumstances.
Right. And what a better example than Munger. I mean, somebody in his mid-30s went broke, was divorced, lost his son, and went on to become one of the greatest investors as well as one of the people who taught us so many lessons.